I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today we're going to talk about self sabotage. I think this will be a juicy topic, especially for all of us on this path of growth and awakening. Self sabotage seems to appear periodically as a theme, as something that uh, raises its head, and perhaps there's another way to perceive it. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen just flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs. And as you exhale any tension, stress, fatigue, negativity. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine brilliant, bright light, the energy of it just lighting up your molecules and your electrons and illuminating your cells from inside out so that you share this beautiful glow out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining stress, tension, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together. Softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms. Feel how delicious that sensation is, how amazing it is to really have sensual experience, to be present to the wonder of that, and bring yourselves present right here right now. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So today we're going to talk about self-sabotage. uh, it's so interesting to me that with some regularity I see people on the verge of a massive, massive breakthrough, and like in a behavior, like say that there's an issue that has been long standing around relationship, and all of a sudden they're about to make this massive breakthrough, like to get on the other side of it, really addressing the issue. And then what happens is a pretty epic breakdown, or what they will call self sabotage. And just this past week, I had a couple people show up with big, big things, big events that looked like self sabotage. And I think that this is worth talking about because good morning, Sally. Haven't seen you for a while. Welcome. It's great to have you here. As far as self sabotage goes, when we do a behavior that counters or looks like it's countering our progress or our intention, we end up feeling like a failure, and we end up feeling like uh, good morning, Roslyn. Welcome, welcome. Great to have you here. We're talking about self sabotage, and how when we're on the verge of making a really strong positive change. Welcome, Robert. Great to have you here. That we often exhibit a behavior that is the epitome of the behavior that we're looking at changing, or that is in the process of being changed. So, good morning, Irma. Welcome back. Great to have you back, and great to have you with us this morning. So, I we're talking about self sabotage and how it's in these moments of massive transition where the old behavior asserts itself. And I want to talk about how, we see this as self sabotage. We often see it as a reason to continue with self hate or lack of self trust. And what I'm thinking is that we have programs like there's sort of a big part of us that's very robotic, that just doesn't isn't awake, that is just going through the motions. And in these cases of self-sabotage, when we're actively moving into a new dimension of experience and awareness, and we're right on the edge, we're super threatened by it, right? This old behavior is super threatened by it, because this transformation is going to mean that that behavior gets disappeared, that identity goes away, that you transcend it, you go beyond it. And so it's kind of its last throes, its last ditch efforts to rope you in, and also, like to keep itself alive. And what I think is that these moments of self-sabotage are profound moments of choice, an opportunity for us to make a conscious and deliberate choice, and to wake up from that robotic programming that we have, these patterns that we live within, that operate us rather than us operating them. So Sally says, my issues always appear whenever I get close to happiness. I would try to shove the person away from me, cut ties, let go, and just not be with them anymore. I recognized this after I met my current spouse, that this was my behavior, because I'd even tried it with her. So thank you for sharing that, Sally, because this is something that happens in relationship over and over and over again. And it's really interesting to me, and I think we get to put it in a different perspective. Both of these issues this past week with clients occurred in the context of relationship, and 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 the context of love, and wanting to be able to experience love, but also being terrified of it in a certain respect, wanting to protect oneself from being hurt. And so what happens is, in order to protect ourselves from being hurt, what do? We push away the people that we love, because they could hurt us. Meantime, we're hurting us first. It's like, well, if I initiate this, if I hurt myself first, then they can't hurt me, and or it won't hurt as bad. And the thing is that initially these behaviors are cultivated as protections. They're initially cultivated with a positive intention, and that positive intention is to protect us. However, what happens over time is these behaviors then become the thing that destroys us, or frustrates us. We become trapped within the behavior, and it exercises itself in ways that are exactly counterproductive to the desired outcome. Good morning, Tammy. Welcome. It's great to have you here. So let's just dig into this a little bit more deeply. So let's say you're in a committed relationship, and it's new. It's a new relationship, and it's about to get taken to the next level. And you find yourself involving yourself in some capacity with somebody else. And it could be once, it could be multiple times, it could be um, superficial, it could be, intense. But what happens is you find yourself doing something with another person that then brings your whole relationship into turmoil and question. And if you decide to share that this occurrence happened, it's kind of like you're trying to blow up the existing relationship that you're wanting, that you're desiring. So it looks like self-sabotage, because here you've created this behavior that could blow things up, and that way um, you get to be the victim if the other person says, well, I don't want to be with you anymore, or you get to continue to hate yourself, or to believe that you can't have a relationship, because this robotic behavior drew you into doing something that would perpetrate and perpetuate the pattern that you were on the verge of breaking through, to the other side of. So it's all very, very fascinating, and it doesn't make logical or rational sense at all, because here we've set up this structure to protect ourselves that keeps us from the very thing that we most desire, right? So Sally says, yes, it can be extremely tiring living life like this. I guess it can. It absolutely can. We're our own worst enemy, But I want to give a different vantage point onto this. But Sally goes on to say, I was always left with the um, woe is me emotional state, not feeling worthy of love. And when I seen it as me being the true fault of my own unhappiness, that was a true wake up call. Exactly. So when we recognize that there's this, it's almost like a machine. And good morning, Andrea. Welcome, welcome. We're talking about self-sabotage. And so it's the machine that's kicking in, it's our robot self that's kicking in. And we get the opportunity to wake up from that, to recognize it, to see that pattern. And if we're fortunate enough, we can see the pattern in the midst of it or shortly thereafter, and recognize, wow, there's this part of me that was just absolutely terrified at the prospect of this change, at the prospect of actually being vulnerable, of actually opening my heart to somebody that could really, I could end up devastated. The thing is that when we do the robot thing, we end up devastated anyway, right? And we get to continue to hate ourselves, and we get to continue not trusting ourselves, and we get to feel woe is me, and what's wrong with me, and what's wrong with my life. When we recognize that this robot thing doesn't mean anything about us. It's not personal. It's not even about the other person. What it is this robotic behavior that is asserting itself over and over again, and we get the opportunity, when we recognize it, to choose differently and to really take ownership of that pattern and say, wow, I see this, and what's the truth of it is underneath, I'm terrified. And that's what allowed the pattern to assert itself, is the denial of being terrified, is not recognizing the emotion that was underlying that, the that triggered that behavior. So interesting, right? To say, okay, if I'm really being present, I can recognize that I'm really scared about this step, this intimacy that's evolving. For instance, in the context of a relationship, I'm really intimidated. I'm frightened. I'm um, scared of the unknown. I'm scared I'll get hurt. I'm scared of being vulnerable. When we recognize that, we're unplugging the robot, we're unplugging the machine, we're actually being present. Sometimes it takes the assertion of the machine to recognize it and to be able to step back enough to say, oh, there's something going on here, and not to believe that we are the machine, to recognize that we are something more, because we can see the machine. If we were the machine, we wouldn't be able to see it. So if we can see that the mechanics of that, then potentially we can come back from a place of greater conscious awareness and choice. And then that enables us to interact with the other person from a place of responsibility, personal responsibility and ownership and strength. And then to be able also to come back and confirm, you know what, I actually am a whole lot clearer now that I really do care. I don't know what's going to happen. That terrifies me. And that was the source of this behavior. Sometimes what happens is that we, in order to protect ourselves, maybe a more subtle expression of this, what looks like self-sabotaging but is the robotic behavior, um, is when we're really starting to fall for someone, we start finding their faults. We start finding all the things that are wrong with them, and we use that to justify pulling away. That's enough, rather than doing a behavior that challenges our affection or that's going to blow everything up. Starting to find somebody's faults, that can blow things up too. That's another way to blow things up. uh, to be really falling into a deep critical mode, because if there's all this stuff wrong with this person, then obviously I shouldn't be in this relationship. So let's talk about other ways that you might sabotage yourself. Maybe there are things at work, for instance, where you're about to get a promotion and then you don't fulfill on a project that was the linchpin type project to get you to the next level or whatever in your job. Um, or maybe you have an argument or a falling out with a coworker that's instrumental in your promotion or your ability to function well in the workplace. There are all different kinds of ways that we do this. And why it is happening typically is because there's a part of ourselves or an identity that we've held on to that we have the opportunity to move beyond, that is being threatened, and it asserts itself kind of, and it can be like it's dying throes, its last gasp, trying to assert itself, and we can either fall prey to it or not. And so those times, if we can recognize these moments that look like self-sabotage as instead moments of choice, if we can recognize them as feedback that is giving us indicators of something deeper going on, and we get to explore that and take ownership of it and stand solidly in that choice to move beyond that fear or that limitation, that limited identity, then it gives us, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be fallout from the situation, but it does mean that we give ourselves the opportunity to identify more of the root cause and move through that into a fuller, more whole expression of ourselves and awareness of ourselves and ownership of ourselves, responsibility. And responsibility meaning responsibility, ability to respond. So what do you guys think about this? Where you have uh, experienced these moments, and part of this whole self-sabotage pattern what are the consequences of it? They enable us to continue to stay small, to continue to beat ourselves up, to continue to make ourselves wrong, to continue to hate uh, and not trust ourselves. So it's a really big deal. So Rosalind says self-sabotage in family relationships. The pattern I'm working to break is labeling or generalizing how a conversation is going to go. I am more aware of the words I choose when reacting to the other person's choice of words, even when their words are criticizing me. A part of me wants to assert myself with how I disagree with their criticism. I have to remember to center self and often react in silence. This is so powerful, Rosalind, because in terms of our robotic behaviors and our reactivity, family relationships are probably the biggest challenge that most of us have. They're so deeply ingrained. The patterns in them are so deeply ingrained. And so we tend to hear the conversations and the criticisms or the discussions or the words of family members through a very heavily patterned filter that often truly cannot hear the authentic intention behind the statement. We often interpret things in ways that they are not at all intended based on this robot. And so you are taking a hugely powerful step to be present and to unplug the robot so that you can interact with these situations from a place of greater choice. Congratulations to you. That's one of the most challenging things I think we are faced with as a general population, for sure. So congratulations on that. And sometimes silence is the best response, for sure. Sally says, I try to breathe my way through everything as far as my relationships, including my family. However, I was not afraid to cut ties with some of my family members who did not respect my worth and the family. And unfortunately, sometimes cutting ties, at least temporarily, is something that we need in order to heal ourselves. And sometimes it's just the best way in the moment to cope. um, I've seen this happen, especially when we feel fragile, when we're not really in a place of integration or wholeness, when we're not able to hold our core with alignment, when we're not able, when we're very easily influenced. Sometimes we need to remove ourselves from the influences that sway us and that we get triggered by to and move into reactivity. So sometimes we just have to remove ourselves. So Irma says, for me, not letting myself be in my grown-up power. And since I don't see where or how to move forward, I get in panic and stop myself. So Irma, I think that this is not uncommon, you know, that fear of unknown or not knowing what the next steps are make us stop, and not letting yourself be in your grown-up power, like to I see this wonderfully strong, brilliant light in you, Irma, and I've seen you be in that presence, in expressing that presence. And there are other times when I see you fall into the maybe the child who it is very unsure of herself. And the moments that you're in your strength are the moments when you're out of your head and in your heart. And I think that this is so for so many of us, that by being connected, by allowing ourselves to connect to our gut and our heart, our inner knowing, then that gives us the courage or the confidence to take our next steps, to move into the next moment and the next moment and the next moment. So we're talking about self-sabotage, and I think, you know, we see this opportunity. We see, yesterday we were talking about seeing the possibility of our own greatness. Can be very intimidating, right? Because why? Because it means going beyond the limiting notions that we have of ourselves. It means showing up in a different way. It doesn't mean having to be superhuman, but it does mean stepping into something that's bigger than ourselves. And I think that that's the case as we're talking about relationship and self-sabotage in relationship. I think that that's the case there, is stepping into something bigger than ourselves. When we choose to step out of the robot and wake up, we're stepping into a bigger awareness of the world and the dynamics that are at play. And it calls us to be looking at the world beyond ourselves. You know, there is some security, even if we're busy looking at ourselves and reflecting the lens back on ourselves and making ourselves miserable. There is some security in knowing that my world is only this big. And when we step out of the robot, the world expands, and our experience of it and our access to it expands, and it opens us to the unknown in a very glorious way. But that magnificence can also be leaving us in a state of awe and fear, maybe, you know, fear and quaking at the magnificence that is available to us. It's bizarre to me that we do respond to that magnificence with fear somehow, but that fear is very much aligned with invigoration and awe and wonder and exhilaration. And we can choose to move into that. And part of that is recognizing this this self-sabotaging behavior as feedback, as something that is not an absolute, as something that is maybe highlighting in sometimes a cataclysmic way our opportunity to make a choice. Because what happens often as a result of self-sabotage is we throw ourselves into a cycle of shame and self-blame and guilt, and we get caught in that, and then it just recharges the robot batteries. Whereas instead we can say, oh wow, okay, so I'm having this experience of shame and guilt and self-blame and self-hatred, and what was really at play, like what was happening with this behavior that asserted itself, and where did it come from, and why did it, what was the trigger that triggered it, and am I at a place where I can move beyond this now, where I can let myself not have, or allow myself to have the shame and blame and guilt, and allow it to be strong enough to make my choice to be different, to unplug the robot, to make that choice a more solid, lasting, aligned choice. Good morning, Lisa. Thank you so much. I am feeling worlds better today. Thank you. Yeah, so good stuff. Really, really good stuff. Understand the self-sabotage as feedback. And when we do that, really look at what's the underlying dynamic, rather than allowing the self-sabotage and of the robot to work, rather than allowing that behavior to reinforce all the negative things that you were on the verge of breaking through. Allow yourself to see how frightened you were by the prospect of the thing your robot tried to sabotage. So I think that's going to be it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. This is Maggie. And we go live each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on Enlightened World Network's Facebook page. Please check out the wonderful community there. I feel so blessed to be having these morning conversations with you. They are enriching to me, and I hope they are to you. And Andrea says, I suffer with doubt about myself and low self-worth. This does affect and has affected past relationships. Well, so one of the things about low self-worth is it keeps us from being engaged and from engaging with others. And in a weird, backwards way, sometimes issues around self-worth are there to protect us from being hurt by others, right? If we take on this idea of not being worthy, then maybe we keep ourselves from other people, and therefore keep ourselves from getting hurt from other people. But the thing is that we're totally destroying ourselves, and we're keeping ourselves from experiencing the things the experiences that would counteract that self-worth issue. So it's this crazy circle. It really is a circle that is extremely irrational. And when we can penetrate that, recognize that, we're reinforcing our self-worth over and over with all different kinds of behaviors that are this robot. And so this is a bad robot. You know, we get to awaken ourselves from that pattern. And so, Andrea, I hope that you can find your way through to having different conversations with yourself other than the ones that reinforce your lack of worthiness, because you're making it up anyway. And these stories, we make up these stories and then beat ourselves up with them. And we need to start telling ourselves better stories so that we can um, allow ourselves to be worthy enough to participate in the world. And Lisa, no worries. I'm glad you were able to join us. So I think that that's it, guys. So much love to you. And let's wake up from the robot, shall we? And I hope to see you back here again really soon. Until then, lots and lots and lots of love.